For the News and Observer, I'm Dawn Vaughan, Capitol Bureau Chief and host of Under the Dome. You're listening to our latest episode for the week of August 5th, 2024. Today I'm joined by my politics team colleague at the legislature here in Raleigh, Avi Bajpai. By the time you're all listening to this on Monday, Vice President Kamala Harris, who is, as everybody knows now, the Democratic, once she passes all her checks everything off, the Democratic nominee for president versus former President Donald Trump. And the big news in the tail end of July anyway in North Carolina was if Governor Roy Cooper may have been a vice president pick. Not very much. He apparently was maybe mildly considered at some point, decided he didn't want to do it, but kind of took the attention for a week or so until it came out that he wasn't even part of the vetting process or anything like that. So as you listen, maybe Harris has already picked who her person is. But as we turn to the rest of Cooper's time in office, he still has the rest of August, September, October, November, December to really decide how he wants to end his legacy. Of course, he's working to help elect Josh Stein to replace him. And for the Harris campaign, Harris will be in Raleigh, we're told, as far as the specific area of if we're in city of Raleigh or where, we'll find out soon on Thursday. And I'm sure Cooper will give a speech about her. So a lot of us have done coverage this past week about kind of what's next for Cooper. What's he going to be doing these next few months? One of the stories I wrote was, kind of poking holes in the idea that he was worried about Lieutenant Governor Robinson doing something as acting governor. And the truth is there is nothing that would be some big legal change in the state because Republicans already, the legislature has more power in North Carolina. Republicans have the supermajority there. But he could do something that Cooper would have to respond to or whatever, say he was out on the campaign trail. But he's going to be out on the campaign trail anyway. Avi, you wrote about that. So what can we expect from him as far as his travel these next few months?
As a top surrogate for Kamala Harris, we talked to Morgan Jackson, who is a top Democratic strategist in the state, top advisor to Cooper. And he told us that, we should expect to see Cooper traveling to multiple swing states across the country. So, he had talked about concern that if he left the state, Mark Robinson might try to take some of the spotlight and try and get some attention.
I think spotlight is pretty much like the main thing that he could do, and he could potentially do that when Cooper's out traveling.
Now, one thing is maybe as a running mate, as a vice presidential pick, maybe your out-of-state travel is longer and greater. But if you just have to sort of fly out to Pennsylvania, for example, for a rally, then maybe it's less of a trip, a shorter trip. But Jackson told us, expect to see Cooper traveling to multiple swing states. He was basically indicating nothing is really off the table. So wherever the Harris campaign says that they want Cooper out talking to voters, stumping for her, it could be the Rust Belt states, up in New Hampshire maybe, and he even raised the possibility of the Southwest, Arizona, Nevada. And then also expect to see Cooper do more TV. This past week we saw him on MSNBC, on CNN, and I was told that Cooper will be ramping up those TV hits as well, TV and other media. So
he seems to like national TV media more than state, even as governor of the state, as we've all seen these past few years. It'll be interesting to see how that will play where you're, say, in Arizona and you're like, oh, and hey, here's the North Carolina governor, and how that would have been, say, again, we don't know, what if Harris will have picked by the time you all are listening to this. Say she picks Shapiro and then takes him out to Arizona, or she picked Walz and brings Walz to North Carolina.
Yeah, I mean,
it's more probably like fundraising too, and just talking to all of those key players to sort of, gin up support just across the country with each other, I would think.
Yeah, making this case against Donald Trump That's, top responsibility for these surrogates. And also just supporting Harris, defending her. I mean, this is going to be a very intense next couple of months through Election Day. So that's going to be, every single day there are things in the news cycle that the surrogates have to address and respond to. We actually saw that this past week with Cooper himself, addressing some of the things going on in the national news cycle as it related to the presidential race. He most recently he weighed in on these comments that Trump made to the convention of the National Association of Black Journalists, where Trump started talking about Kamala Harris's identity, racial identity, and Cooper responded to that this past week. He had a campaign event in Durham, and he was asked about that, and he was saying, well, Trump is just showing us who he is. So I think that's another thing we're going to see is, as a top surrogate, Cooper is going to be weighing in the presidential race more often.
It's wild that all of this has just been, a few weeks. I don't think it was the summer that anyone predicted, and here we are in early August, and we'll see how that, August will be so much different than July, and who knows by the time we get into the fall. And Republicans have kind of had to just sort of reframe themselves, decide what their tactic is going to be across the state here. Of course, Trump already came here recently in Charlotte, and he'll come again. When will J.D. Vance come here? Where will they go in the state and that sort of thing. So I'm sure we'll have pretty regular, press conferences where, it's Cooper and then Democratic Senator Natalie Murdoch of Durham. She works for the campaign as well. So she's always going to be there. NCDP, Chair Anderson Clayton is going to be everywhere. And it'd be interesting to see how many of them end up at DNC coming up here.
Yep.
In a few weeks, and just whatever crazy news cycle happens. And until then, of course, I mean, you all have hopefully read our coverage. If not, we'll tell you now. What's next for Cooper, kind of what everybody has been talking about for a while now. And Morgan Jackson, his top advisor, talked to all of us and other media too about Cooper. Well, it's the framing of people are asking Cooper, but obviously Cooper also is interested and maybe running for U.S. Senate. And the cabinet position might be more likely. There's more chances of winning it, essentially, because you get appointed. So if Kamala Harris is the next president of the United States and whoever her VP is and decides to tap Cooper for Attorney General, which he was for 16 years here, or even commerce or
education, transportation, floated around.
Yep.
Our colleague Danielle Battaglia had a story on this past week, and one of the things I read in there was this point that whatever his path is next, it's going to determine timing wise too. It's really important if he decides to run for Senate. This point was made that that's going to be a grueling campaign if he runs against Thom Tillis, and you would have to start that well in advance.
Well, you have the whole year 2025 and 2026, assuming I don't know if Tillis has said that he's running again.
I don't know about that either.
Didn't Nichols say that he wants to run for U.S. Senate?
I
don't know how that's going to play out now if Cooper decides to get in. And then if Trump wins, and then what? What if there isn't some cabinet appointment? Are you going to go be a professor for a time or private sector? But we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about another branch of government, the legislative branch, which had a little bit of action here in Raleigh this past week, plus our pick for Headliner of the Week. Avi and I have a joint Headliner of the Week, and all of you that spend time at the legislative building will definitely want to stick around and listen to that. You're listening to Under the Dome. We'll be right back.
Score more with the college-branded Venmo debit card and earn up to 5% cash back with Venmo Stash. Got paid back? With the Venmo debit card, you can instantly access your balance and spend on what you want, like game day snacks, gear, tickets, and more. The more you do, the more cash back you can earn. Plus, there's no monthly fee or minimum balance. Sign up now at Venmo.com/collegecard. The Venmo MasterCard is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. Select schools available. Venmo Stash terms and exclusions apply at venmo.me/stash terms. Max $100 cash back per month.
So good, so good, so good.
New spring arrivals are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. Get ready to save big with up to 60% off Rag & Bone, Marc Jacobs, Free People, and more.
How did I not know Rack has Adidas.
Because there's always something new.
Join the Nordy Club to unlock exclusive discounts, shop new arrivals first, and more. Plus, buy online and pick up at your favorite Rack store for free. Great brands, great prices. That's why you Rack.
You're listening to Under the Dome. I'm Dawn Vaughan here with Avi Bajpai. We talked about the executive branch in the first half of the show. And let's move on over to the General Assembly. The House came back for a voting session this week. The Senate didn't. They did appoint Jim Perry's replacement. The Senate really doesn't have any interest in coming to these few-day sessions for the summer. There's a good chance that the Senate may not come back into session until a week-long session that's planned in November. It's the week before Thanksgiving, but after the election, where the Republican supermajority will get to decide whatever they want to do, depending on the outcome of the November election. But the House came to override 3 of Cooper's vetoes, and really what we can talk about, like what happened with that whole floor session. But in talking to Speaker Moore after, and Speaker Moore is a short timer since he's, says he'll be in D.C. next year, but he does still first have to win
the election in
He has
November.
to win the election.
Yep.
It's obviously, it's a Republican red district, but he still has to win and then go. And he's already kind of setting things up because there was a rally of, I think, a few dozen or maybe 50 or so private school parents who want to know when their vouchers opportunity scholarship program is going to come to them, and so they can get that payment. And it looks like it's not going to happen this year. Moore told reporters, maybe when we get together again and it'll work out. And I said, well, isn't this just part of if you end up doing a budget adjustment deal? And then Moore says, well, yeah, it's money. It should be this, and then money for public education. And he said he hadn't talked to Senate Leader Phil Berger in a couple of weeks. And I asked Berger's office the same thing and confirmed Berger has not talked to Moore in a couple of weeks. So I don't even think we're at the point of they might negotiate something. I think they're just not really talking at all. And maybe they will at some point closer to the election if we see any other action going on. But
yeah, Moore sounded fairly optimistic that both chambers would be back pretty soon. Potentially that those dates in September, I think it's September 9th through 11th, to conclude some of these overrides. These were 3 House bills, so the House took votes on it. The Senate has to vote on those bills as well to override the veto, and then there's 2 Senate bills. So that's a couple of votes that need to happen. But if it is the case that the Senate doesn't return for any votes before the election, well, that's a pretty big deal because that means no action being taken relatively soon on vouchers. There's a couple of other pretty big unfinished items. There's been this bill, of course, that I've talked about on the podcast several times. We've been reporting on for a couple of years now, but this big priority for Republicans, bill to require sheriffs to cooperate with ICE. Of course, it's a big election year issue. That was moving forward until it wasn't, and it seems to have stalled over the past couple of weeks, couple of months, and there isn't really much of an indication that there's going to be a resolution sometime soon. So, I mean, to me, that's the most revealing thing, that if they left at the end of June and they're not really planning for both chambers to be back until after the election, that means that really they left without kind of on a sour note, and they weren't able to reach an agreement on these things.
yeah, I mean, it's a short session. It passes what you have, like the political will, right? But it seems like there's not a lot of incentive, I guess, maybe for if Berger and the Senate Republican leadership feel like there's something they want to do to get whatever attention or to campaign on before November, then I could see them saying, okay, we'll come in September. And, really at this point, it's Moore that needs things, right? If he's trying to campaign on it or just wrap up what he wants his legacy in the House to be. And the Senate, they're ready to fund the voucher backlog, and the House isn't because they've got other things that they might want to put in some sort of deal. And the exact language that Moore said in one of his answers was, he's also got to think about the caucus and the leadership coming in and setting them up. He talked about in the best, negotiating. So I think that he's also thinking about House versus Senate negotiations, not just this year, but how does he want to set up for, and for all intents and purposes, the next speaker is going to be Destin Hall, the rules chair, unless he loses and majority changes. But, we're not really kind of seeing that probably happening. But I don't know, right? Elections are full of surprises. They may not have a supermajority next time, probably maintain their majority, but that's up to the voters.
Yeah, it seems like right now Republicans are just focused on the election and campaigning and seeing what their seat totals will look like post-November. It's because we talked about the ICE bill vouchers, but there was also this question at the end of June about other constitutional amendments that came up in the last few weeks of session pretty quickly. And I believe one of those amendments was passed and approved to be on the ballot. And there was this question about, is there enough time to come back in July or August or whenever else to approve some other ones? It doesn't seem like that's going to happen either. So,
well, there's one other thing about after the election. If it's something before you win that you don't want to vote for or against, you have a lot more freedom to do that, once you're coming back.
Right.
So that could be some of what people are thinking. So before we have a few minutes left, we'll move on to our pick for headliner of the week. Avi and I and others from our team were at the legislative building, others from the press corps this week. And we'll say this one thing about session. In between the overrides, Representative Jason Sain gave a long farewell speech. And there was kind of just before we get to the next override, let's have this point of personal privilege, or let's do that. And it was sort of like a little mini reunion of everybody because, they were all there except only half the building because the Senate didn't come. Of course, they're much smaller body. But anyway, the legislative snack bar, I brought my lunch because it was Wednesday and they usually don't have anything good in the cafeteria, but set the scene, Avi, for the snack bar situation.
Yeah. I guess it's a lesson in not taking things for granted and assuming they'll always be there. But we went over to the snack bar to get some lunch. I placed my order and asked for fries with seasoning. And I was told, we don't have seasoning anymore, seasoning salt, I should say. And I was kind of, very surprised to hear that, and asked the staff, asked the employees what was going on, and they were fun about it. They were having fun about it and saying, laughing with us and saying, I said, that's the one thing that everyone in this building really wants. That's what people come,
Is that what you said to the cashier?
That's what they come to lunch for.
Yeah.
So looking forward to the seasoning salt.
And they just said it's not coming. And so I walk in and you're eating there with Micaiah Seminaro, who's like a NNO intern alumni that now works for AP. And who else is there? I think Luciana.
Yeah.
So, and so I went to the state employees and asked them about it because the seasoning salt, they put it on your fries in the snack bar. You can do it yourself in the LOB. Back when I first had lawmakers on the podcast and I'd say what do you get? They would mention that. I believe Senator Murdoch, who we were just talking about earlier, was one of the people that mentioned that. Maybe it was Representative Alston. But anyway, all y'all know what we're talking about. And there's no more seasoning salt. It was an upper management decision. And I said, well, should we complain about it? And they said, so here we are, we're complaining about it. I don't know if it's Paul Cobal's decision or someone else, but I tweeted about it. And a lot of other people are concerned. So maybe something will change before the November session where we don't have to eat plain, boring fries. But we'll keep you updated on this very important. It's important when you spend all your time there, and everybody talks about the food there, so.
The response to your tweet was the takeaway for me. This isn't just a reporters or press corps initiated thing, but this is generating interest from all corners of the building, from lawmakers, from staff.
Well, the staff are the ones that recommended the snack bar and the chicken Philly. So Anyway, we'll keep you up to
We
date
hope that
on
the powers
kind
that
of
be
things.
are listening.
Yeah. All right. For the News and Observer, I'm Dawn Vaughan with Avi Bajpai. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
For more from our politics team, subscribe to the News and Observer at newsobserver.com/subscribe. Follow us on Twitter at Under the Dome and NC Insider, and sign up for our weekly political newsletter, also called Under the Dome, at newsobserver.com/newsletters. Thanks for listening.